Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 3, Episode 14, this series' penultimate episode, Flash Strike. Let's break down this action-heavy episode scene by scene for all the Easter eggs and animation details you might have missed. We open the episode in hyperspace, and anytime we see these blue streaks, I'm always scanning these for shadows of Purrgil hyperspace whales because I honestly feel like we've always been intersecting with their migration paths, but only recently Grogu was, stop and smell the roses enough to look out and notice them. I always love that moment because I kind of feel like Grogu is me when I'm watching this nerdy stuff. Like, while it can be easy to just focus on the plot of the mission, I'm always like, well, what's outside the window? That shadow looks like a whale. Is it a whale? Isn't art beautiful? But we push in on this vessel that Echo had hijacked and secretly latched onto the Imperial science vessel. Its wings now folded up like a bat. And I love that when we see, I think that's Hunter in the cockpit, he's seated upside down and then he climbs down in a way to access the rest of the ship with properly oriented gravity. And I always like shots like this, like where we see Luke and Han go like up and down the ladders into the gunner seats that are oriented differently from the outside of the Falcon, but they plan to detach from the science vessel and then land in the jungle. But Crosshair says, "The jungle's deadly." Remember that Crosshair has first-hand experience with this jungle when he and Omega escaped from the Tantus base back in episode 3, Shadows of Tantus, where they were attacked by the hulking Dryax, which comes back in this episode. But inside the science vessel, Echo accesses this database. The Orbesh is A15, A13, CO2, D12, and lots more. And I'm wondering if they might refer to the inventory related to the Zillo Beasts, because obviously the Zillo Beast is why this science vessel is headed to Tantus. Meanwhile, Scourge updates Hemlock about the upcoming science vessel and the events of the past episode, so they send a squadron of V-Wing fighters. The V-Wings are the nimble single-seat starships that the Empire favored. They first appeared in Revenge of the Sith, and their design is meant to invoke the same silhouette as the TIE Fighter, the ship that would eventually replace the V-Wing as a signature starfighter of the Empire. But Crosshair spots this group.
That's not a standard formation. They're expecting us.
Yeah, it's a small detail, but I like that Crosshair's military experience tells him what it looks like when fighters are just out on patrol, and thus they would have the element of surprise on their side, versus when these would be in attack formation, and then they would have to pilot more defensively. And that split-second observation allows Hunter to veer away before they fire. Turbo laser cannons fire from the base. Now, these are similar to the World War II anti-aircraft flak guns in that they seem to explode in midair, damaging things in a radius around them, but these explosions rattle the colorful tile games played by the kids inside. Jax, who seems to have his hand permanently glued to his Mary Ellen cheek, looking like teenage Erik Voss on Zit Day, he had stacked the highest tower. But while before, these kids were playing on separate tables and they were playing their hologram games, now they're playing with these simpler, colorful tiles, ones that Omega pulled out of the drawer and used to map out the vault. So we are seeing how Omega has encouraged them to sit at the same table and use their materials to strategize. And despite the rumbling, that weird floating circular disc Jenga tower is still standing. Omega is overjoyed at the bombing of the turbo lasers because it means that her brothers are there to rescue them. Dr. Carr tells Dr. Scalder to keep an eye on the children, and she corrects her specimens because Scalder is onto her. And she's like, "I will not babysit. I will watch these rats in the cage. I will not show love because my name is Scalder." But I love that the way Omega knows just by the booms and the scientists being worried that it must be her brothers reminds me of that bit in Die Hard where Holly, John McClane's wife, is held hostage by Hans Gruber's guys and sees how pissed off they are, and she just knows that only her husband can make people that mad. As their shuttle crashes, Hunter turns the damaged shuttle during its free fall so that its guns are pointed up at these V-Wings, a move similar to that sick move that Rey and Finn pull with the Falcon in The Force Awakens. And I don't care how much the Star Wars fandom hates on the sequel trilogy, this sequence rocked. And I'll die on that hill. And then Hunter hits the thrusters so that these plunging V-Wings dive directly into them and they kind of have to veer chaotically to the side, which was this insane game of chicken similar to what they used with the Juggernaut in the past episode. And it could have been disastrous, but it pays off. And Hunter can steer the crashing vessel with just a bit more of a head start from the V-Wings. Meanwhile, the pursuing V-Wing locks onto the shuttle and the sound effect of the ship locking on and firing is the same sound effects from the Lucasfilm archive from when Darth Vader locked onto Luke's X-Wing during the 1977 Star Wars Trench Run. Hunter activates the autopilot, and Orbesh on its screen reads auto control initiated, and then Wrecker opens the hatch for them to abandon ship. Wrecker and Crosshair jump out first, bashing against the trees. Next is Hunter and Rampart, and the shrieking voice actor Noshir Dalala emits as Rampart is just so great. Very, very similar to Jamie Lee Curtis in True Lies, if you ask me. I mean, the action animation from Lucasfilm was just so good here. Hunter has to shoot out Rampart's cable spool and then catches him with one arm, and then they cut the cord as the ship explodes overhead, and it's kind of like a reverse version of True Lies. Instead of the limo crashing into the water beneath them, the ship explodes over their heads. So Wrecker and Crosshair hike through the jungle, where we learn that Crosshair's hand trimmer is still there. Perhaps as he's getting closer and closer to this base, his memories are re-triggering his trauma. They reconnect with Hunter and Rampart. Meanwhile, as Scorch searches a science vessel, Echo suits up in Stormtrooper armor and is accosted by an RA-7 protocol droid. Echo shoots this droid and steals his hand. And I just love the parallelism of Echo using a piece of the Empire to make himself more whole, while Crosshair is struggling with his hand, as he still is trying to sever his link from the time with the Empire. And it kind of reminds me of that moment in Andor when Luthen Rael says,
"I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them."
Echo drops down the same droid straw and slips into the base with the other Imperials. Meanwhile, Omega tells the other kids that they'll need to cover her while she tries to break out. Eva responds,
"Cover you?"
I love how clueless she is, because this is how kids are. They're not like kids who have spent their time with like mercenaries, but just the kind of slow response from Eva totally reminds me of Jimbo when he had that semantic existential crisis with James Woods in The Simpsons.
Hey, now you're you, I'm me.
I'm me?
Hey, don't jerk me around, fella.
Oh, one-shot energy, huh? I think I'll try it. Whoa! So what does One Shot's focus shoe do? So One Shot really is all you need. Begin your transformation with One Shot Energy today by going to oneshotenergy.com/new rockstars for 10% off your order. Omega lifts the panels and climbs through the walls, much like John McClane in Die Hard or like Morpheus' crew in The Matrix, as the DNA sample containers zip past, threatening to wipe her out. There is one little detail. When the bar she's using to balance herself is about to have a container use it as a rail, and Omega has to, at the last second, lift her fingers so that they don't get clipped. Definitely a high M count there. The Force is strong with this one. Rampart tells Crosshair,
"You used to believe good soldiers followed orders."
Depends on who's giving them. The Empire betrayed us both.
yeah, remember Rampart was totally thrown under the bus by the Emperor for the bombing of Camino when the Senate got all pissed off about it. But I like the blocking of the scene. The scene begins with Crosshair following Rampart, like following his lead, and then it ends with Crosshair being like, you know what? I'm gonna walk right past you. And he surpasses him ethically as he's following his own path. Now Rampart rests and idiotically leans against the flank of a sleeping Dryax. Now this creature is designed by Clint Felker, and these creatures were meant to be a cross between a bear and a panther, but I like how its toothy mouth makes it look like it is always grinning. The clones try to take it on. Wrecker, of course, Leroy Jenkins is right onto its back to try to choke it, but gets thrown off, bashes into a tree. But lucky for them, the Dryax gets distracted by stormtroopers and attacks them instead. Rampart gets separated and captured. This is the last we see of him this episode. Makes me wonder what he's going to do in the finale. Like, is he gonna get a second chance from the Empire, or is he just gonna be devoured by the Empire and we're gonna see how horrible they are when it comes to like devouring their own? I feel like they kept him alive just so that like either Hemlock or Palpatine or Tarkin can just like cruelly execute him. Scalder arrives to get each of the kids' DNA samples, and each of them tries to stall, and it's just so sweet.
Doctor, I'm still hungry.
It will pass.
It will pass? Eating disorders much? Then Omega discovers the big side project that Hemlock was working on, which sadly was not cloning mythosaurs, in which I had hoped and hoped and hoped, but you know, a kid can dream. It is a tank with a young ZILLO Beast. ZILLO Beast! These were introduced back in Clone Wars Season 2, Episode 18, the ZILLO Beast, in the following episode, Season 2, Episode 19, the ZILLO Beast Strikes Back, where on Malastare, the Republic's electrophoton bomb to take out the Separatist droids awakens the ZILLO Beast Predator that feeds on energy. Palpatine saw in these an opportunity and brought it back to Coruscant for experimentation, where in Episode 19, he plans to use its shell for clone trooper armor to give the Republic a swift victory over the Separatists. This ends up getting debated in the Senate, of course, but then the ZILLO escapes and rampages across Coruscant. But secretly, Palpatine orders to clone the ZILLO, and then it resurfaces back in Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 11, Metamorphosis, when the Bad Batch found a baby ZILLO that was cloned by the Empire, and I think that's one we're looking at here. This is the episode where Lama Su is brought to Tantus and persuades Nala Se to cooperate with Hemlock. So this baby ZILLO is zapped with an energy ray, which could be testing its hide or maybe just feeding it. I wondered maybe if Palpatine could be planning to use this ZILLO shell and stormtrooper armor to be able to like reproduce its synthetically, or maybe even in the construction of fleet ships, like something that can absorb energy blasts without taking damage, an organic form of what the Mandalorians have, Beskar, something else to cloak his forces in. But knowing these Lucasfilm animators and the way Dave Filoni looks at all this, I kind of just think the idea here is Palpatine just wants a giant kaiju pet that he can use to conquer Mandalore should their mythosaur ever awaken and fight for them. I imagine if you're working for Star Wars, they're probably thinking like, you know, we haven't had like a true kaiju battle in this recent era, so let's like find a way to make that happen. So Eva tries to stall Scalder by saying she doesn't feel good, but it doesn't work. Jax tries to stall too, no luck, but when Scalder checks Omega's cell, she's back. Just like Danny Ocean conveniently back in the holding room when Terry Benedict checks back in on him after the heist. The perfect heist. Emery catches Echo snooping and sees his detachable hand and recognizes him.
Echo. That's your name, isn't it? Omega talked about you all.
Now, Emery said she was just doing her job, like, I'm just following orders. But Echo gives her a chance to prove she does have a heart, and Emery promises to take him to the vault. And we end with Omega back with the other kids.
I found something big. I have a plan, and I'm gonna need your help.
A plan, you say? Are we adding another plan to the official list of Bad Batch plans? Would this be plan 100? I think Omega's plan is going to be to free the Zillo Beast and let it drain the energy of the Tantus base. Bad Batch showrunner Jennifer Corbett has been super cryptic on Twitter and teased this gif of Gandalf saying, "Fly, you fools," from the moment he dropped from the bridge in Fellowship of the Ring during his fight with the Balrog. So what can we make from this gif? Is the Zillo Beast the Balrog? I read this as Gandalf equals Tech, and Tech is the one who supposedly died from a death drop, but is totally going to return transformed. Now, is that transformation into a Tech the White, or is it going to be a transformation into the clone assassin? Hope it's a clone assassin. We just haven't really gotten an update on that guy in a couple episodes. And yes, I think the final image is going to be the Bad Batch hitching a ride on the Zillo as their kind of purgle to escape Tantus. What are your predictions for the finale? Comment down below. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss, follow New Rockstars, and subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.